Look, how did PlayStation gross well over $700 million last year? How did Xbox gross over $2.2 billion last year? I mean, they just video games, right? How can they be doing so well? I'm gonna break this down for you. First off, we the bottom feeders are the lab rats. They have been doing tests and studies on us for a very long time. The idea of a world ran by machines and magic with a K, Luciferians and the powers of darkness have been in motion for a long time. A lot of their biggest chess moves was done in the 1900s. Around that time, they gathered the top psychological heads, the top tech scientists, and top researchers of human behavior, and together they created the video games, which has been a project. And around this time, they brought the lower level housings called the projects as well, all in the 1900s. See, it was a lot going on around that time. Big chess moves were being made. And while some may see this as a harmless gift for their child, it is really a psychological monitoring and adjusting tool the wicked elites have been using to brainwash and bring humans closer and closer to the machines. The Jetsons came out in 1962, and in the cartoon they showed you humans interacting with machines in a futuristic way. It seemed far-fetched then, but now, as we talk to Alexia and Siri, we can see that this has been their plan all along. About 10 years after they launched the Jetsons, then came the first video console called Atari. And the game only had one button. That's because before they give you the full controller with 10 buttons, they give you the controller with one first. Almost like having you to take baby steps. The controllers of today have now about 18 buttons. So you see, starting you off with one button was grooming you because the Nintendo came out after it and it had 8 buttons. You see, progression. It was a project. We have always been the lab rats. See, what I want people to understand is the wicked elite don't give you anything because they love you. They give you things like this to master you, and in a sense, bring you closer to machines. Every video game becomes longer and longer and longer with more add-ons to keep your attention longer, because Satan knows that time is of the essence. For example, even if you ask a rich man today, what does he want? A Ferrari or more time? He will choose more time every time. Also, Satan wants a million distractions in your way of reading God's word. How exposed does his hand need to be for us to wake up? The Nintendo came out in 1985, 2 years before I was born. The internet was only about 2 years old around this time. This is how important this chess move was to these satanistic people. Think about that. Video games were in households before the internet was. Satan knows that if he gets your mind, he can then infiltrate easily to bend you towards his will. So why are kids so addicted to games like Fortnite nowadays? It's because of the lab testing they did over the years on us all. Through the years, they have learned to master things such as trigger sounds, imagery, and visual awareness, and also hypnosis, all through analytics, statistics, and data science that we gave them by being their test subjects through these video games without us even knowing it. When you get time, research the Zeigarnik effect. It is a psychology that is used in video games to keep the participant coming back. It gives them hard tasks, and apparently we as humans don't like it when we begin something and we don't finish it, and such circumstances create an eternal tension and preoccupation within that task. Completing the task will provide closure, release of the tension, and a sense of accomplishment. There is usually rewards throughout these games to stroke your need to feel accomplished, which they found out through studies that we all tend to have. Game addiction can become worse than someone being strung out on PCP, meth, heroin, or any other drug. See, those drugs that I just named, when someone takes them, they usher in spirits that will war with the spirit within them. But the video game drug is created by spirits to lock up your mind. They tried pumping drugs in the hood to the bottom feeders, but they found out that the people grew immune to it over the years, and you started to get what they call functioning addicts. Who could even think through the drug, so it kind of backfired. So they decided to do one better. They said, let's put these video games in the houses so we can destroy the mind. If you destroy the mind, the body will follow. They have to maintain the population, y'all. What they fear is the world running out of space and the zones over flooding. They don't want to see nobody in section 8 come up to section 2 and 3 and 1, and no, that's an overflood. So they have to maintain the population. And along with the Zeigarnik effect, the video games are ran off Pavlovian conditioning. And that is when you train someone psychologically to do the same thing repeatedly. For example, they use Pavlovian conditioning for dogs, and they can train them to the point that when they hear something like a bell, their mouth will begin to water because they know that it is time to eat. The same conditioning is done on video gamers, and if they aren't careful, it could crash their brains. It is exactly what they call it, a game, to see who can beat the computer, which they are ultimately trying to rise to run this world. For example, when we go to the grocery store, most people would rather wait in the self-checkout line just to use the computer instead of going to the shorter line to be rung up by a human being. Most of us have become scared of human-to-human interaction. We are solely dependent upon the system, aka the machine. The reason this gaming thing is so much of a problem is because it stifles creativity. Your creativity will only be limited to the code they use to create the game, or the code that's behind the game. It slowly kills human interaction, and it becomes addictive and consciously and subconsciously makes the brain one with this virtual world. The Lord dealt with me a while back on video gaming and said that before they release these video games, they take a copy of the game or an image of the game into a dark room with candles, and they pray over it, praying to demonic gods to so-called bless it. I know it sounds wild, but it's so real. But like I said before, anything creating revenue and residuals will be attached to the pyramid. That's why now they have pro gamers. Pro gamers that they handpick. And most of them have family members who are tied to the Masonic code. And they promote this life of grinding out video games non-stop, and they pay them kids good bucks. The reason why it is a pyramid scheme is because those that they handpick, they tell the bottom feeders, just grind hard and work hard and you'll get up here to be on our team one day. The same thing the handpicked NBA players tell the bottom feeders. So what that does is it makes a young kid at home who would spend 4 hours a day practicing, they now will spend about 12 hours a day or more because they took the bait. Same thing with basketball. A child will go from practicing his basketball shot for 4 hours a day to 12 hours a day. Only thing they have to do is give him or her hope. Just a little bit of hope. But the hope is false tense. These so-called pro players are gatekeepers, and they promote the gaming lifestyle by showing the kids fancy cars and mansions. So remember, the wicked elite don't give us anything because they love us. It is always preparation to the next step. It's a chess game. For example, the likes and dislike option on the YouTube videos is only prepping you for the social credit score that will be in a country near you by 2020.
If you thought the way Facebook tracks you was scary, it's got nothing on the Chinese government, which just unveiled a system of monitoring and grading every citizen's behavior.
And please, I advise you to go look that information up. So in conclusion, they are inching towards total control. The video games are addictive, and if they aren't approached and handled in moderation, it could become hazardous to the brain. The Zeigarnik effect and the Pavlovian conditioning are the foundations of this psychological mind rape. To any kid who may be listening, always remember, you can only play with one controller on the video game, but outside there are many variations to creativity. And to the parents, we can't fault ourselves for a design that we were unaware of. All we can do is approach it better starting today. The video games.